Jonah Tuckman, CEO of eBumps. eBumps is a company that's based out of New York City, and eBumps is developing a new advertising platform for the 21st century. They provide companies with an opportunity to advertise on a revolutionary platform that's unlocking location-based advertising in a real world like never before. By offering space on their eBump to advertisers, drivers can also get paid for driving that they already do while supporting brands and missions that they believe in. Jonah, hopefully I didn't steal. I know you've presented here before, and I hope I didn't steal all your thunder. But I know you have some great announcements as well. You've presented here a couple of times. I know you have some other announcements about some of your recent updates. So we're looking forward to your presentation, Jonah Tuckman.
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you very much, Tim. Great. All right. Well, thank you everyone for being here. My name is Jonah Tuckman. I'm the CEO and founder of eBumps, and at eBumps, we've created a market for 227 million licensed drivers who have not yet had the ability to monetize their space. When we were founding this company, we found a few issues with the out-of-home advertising space as it now stands. For large companies and agencies, we found that an ROI is a difficult thing to track, and it can be quite expensive in the same route. Billboards are difficult to track impressions with and lead to a great deal of fraud and misleading information in terms of how many impressions they truly are getting. For small businesses, an ROI is difficult to track, and there are limited options in the out-of-home space. And for this grouping of people, billboards are far too expensive. And then for the individuals, there's a high need to express themselves that right now is limited to solely social media. And for them, billboards are way too expensive. And thus we created a solution for the out-of-home space, an advertising platform similar to an outdoor Facebook ad store. Through the creation of 21.5-inch LCD screens that are mounted to the passenger side door of vehicles, we have essentially created moving digital billboards with targeted advertising. And from there, for our drivers, we've created a personal monetization system beyond just social media and large online presences. Because it's a new idea, we created a short video that we think explains the idea quite well.
eBumps is creating a completely new ad space, allowing drivers to be paid for work that they're already doing. We give advertisers the insight associated with digital advertisements and the attention-grabbing flair of outdoor ones by allowing them to advertise on the fleet of cars already filling the streets. Users can evaluate their ad campaigns in real time and see when and where people are interacting with them. This gives everyday drivers an additional source of passive income. By displaying our ads on your car, you get paid for the driving you already do. In an ever uncertain world, eBumps provides exciting new opportunities for everyone.
We've identified the market size to be roughly $260 billion, 8.6 billion of these being in the billboard and out-of-home advertising space alone, and 181 million of these being in the digital out-of-home space. Through our work with a company called Street Metrics, who does our impression counting, they have spoken on the fact that through impression counting and ROI analytics, we not only speak to billboard and out-of-home advertisers, but also towards the digital advertising dollars, which are roughly $130 billion annually. Our market, based on rather conservative projections, is roughly $51 million. This is our 2024 annual revenue if we were to have just 1,100 screens on the road, which represents less than 1% of the total market share. Our business model is based on a VCPM, meaning a viewable cost per mil. This allows advertisers to pay a CPM for the digital advertising that we deploy on our platform onto our portable LCD advertising displays. We then take this portion with high margins, dole out a percentage of it towards our drivers and partners. We've made multiple strategic manufacturing and industry partners in our time that have allowed us to be so successful in the past year. Our first was AU Uptronics, who's an LCD manufacturing firm based out of Taiwan. They're often referred to as the best LCD manufacturers in the world, as they now build the screens for companies like Samsung. When first working with AUO, they shared with us that they do not work with startups or small companies, and thus their working with us is incredibly indicative of where they think that our business model will be taking us. We then signed on a company called Tech Global, a system integration firm based out of Chicago. They take our LCDs and build the mounting and further systems that then go onto the vehicles. They represent firms such as 3M, Delta, and Motorola and do incredibly high-level work. We then partnered with a firm, Street Metrics, who works on the collection of impression data and return on investment analytics. They build algorithms that use historical impression data alongside location demographic data and allow us to present really detailed impression counts towards our clients, as well as ROI analytics for them. And lastly, we work with Verizon on our cellular receptors that connect our screens to our devices and our systems. The competition in this space are companies like Grabbit, Firefly, and Halo, all of these being large and bulky permanent fixtures that require professional installation, and similarly, all of these having a revenue cap. Our screens are low-cost LCDs that require no professional installation or not permanent fixtures. Through our work with Street Metrics, we have highly advanced impression data that then differentiates ourselves from billboards and other out-of-home spaces that exist. And because our work is not solely with programmatic advertisers, but additionally with our open ad store, we don't have a revenue cap that would exist in terms of what a programmatic ad firm can sell us, but rather we have an open ad exchange for whoever would like to list ads. For our drivers, we are originally opening in New York City in the beginning of January of 2021. This rollout will be 25 screens, mainly delivery and professional drivers. And as of now, we already have over 100 drivers that have signed up. And similarly, we have 7 screens that have signed on to go onto John's famous hot dog in the heart of Times Square. He's on 46th and Broadway and will also be working as a sales ambassador for us when he is approached daily about running advertisements on his screen, as it is in some of the best locations in the world. He will direct them towards the eBumps system. Right now, a billboard in Times Square is anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000 a day. And thus, at our CPM of $5 to $20, we're wildly undercutting. We're wildly undercutting these billboards and thus opening the market to smaller businesses and individuals. For the small businesses, we've identified this as an applicable solution, which now allows them to run advanced targeted advertising campaigns in the out-of-home space for a cheap and affordable cost. They can now run campaigns in locations specific to their stores and times that they feel they'll get the highest return for an affordable cost, which isn't existent right now in the out-of-home space. And for the individual, we allow for a space of expression. Young activists have a way to spread their message, young musicians and young artists have a way to get their name out, and much more onto our platform. We have strategic partners in our marketing forces as well. Marketing 360 is a Denver-based firm who represents the Denver Broncos. As of now, they get us roughly 86,000 monthly impressions and 3,500 monthly page views. And similarly, we work with ViStar Media, who's a programmatic advertising firm, meaning that they build advertising auctions to all of the unsold space on our system. So when we go to market in early January, as we do not have any sold space on our systems yet, ViStar will be selling the total unsold space, and thus we will have a revenue stream the second that we get to market. We were originally going to market in New York in early January, and from there plan to expand to cities such as Boston, Chicago, Seattle, Austin, Las Vegas, and then further cities within the United States, and have already begun the planning internally of international expansion. Our founding team is myself as CEO, Cole Johnson as the Director of Business Development, and Corn Rose as the Chief Technology Officer. eBumps has a really interesting story where Corn and I actually founded it while still in school. We wrote software and we built hardware in our off-campus house. And then all of us raised over $400,000 before ever graduating and have now built the company to all of its success that it now holds in less than a year. As of now, we've seen pretty exciting traction in Milestones. We've contracted with programmatic advertisers who sell our unsold inventory. We have 25 units that we are deploying in January of 2021 that will see an immediate revenue stream. We've signed up over 100 New York City drivers, and we've contracted 7 screens in Times Square. And we have a letter of intent for international joint ventures that we are currently in the due diligence stage of. And similarly, we are patent pending with a PCT application, meaning that any country that follows the Patent Cooperation Treaty will allow us to patent our IP at a really seamless state, and thus international expansion is quite relevant and easy on the IP protection side. We're raising right now $2 million, which we will use to produce and deploy 500 LCD screens and for additional sales and marketing. Right now, we predict with the data that we've heard on impressions from Street Metrics and the CPM rate that we've heard from ViStar Media that a screen will make us roughly $90 a day and thus $2,700 a month. This then means that these 500 screens will produce over $16 million in annual revenue. And with our high margins, we then hope that this will be our last time raising, as we will then be able to use profit to purchase further screens. In 2024, at a annual revenue of $32 million, which, as I said, is rather conservative and actually below what we have projected, we have an ROI of 53%. And my contact info is right here in case anyone would like to ask further questions or really discuss how we can get involved. And so thank you very much, everyone. I really do hope that you'll be a part of the future of out-of-home advertising with us.
Excellent job. Thank you, Jonah Tuckman. I see there's, I was looking at your ROI, and I know when you look at the ROI, that's an annualized ROI through 2024, which is quite impressive. And January looks to be some revenue production, so that's also quite impressive. We have some questions coming in from the audience, but I want to give the investor judges an opportunity to ask some questions as well. So from our investor judges, do we have some questions? David, looks like you have a question.
Yes, great job, Jonah. I know that you mentioned that the monitors are very low cost, but do you have a strategy to prevent theft off of the vehicles, or any sort of strategy that you can speak to?
Yeah, certainly. So we found ourselves in a really interesting paradox where we wanted them to be easily removable for the user, and yet we also didn't want them to be stolen. And so we had to find the medium between those two, and Street Metrics, Tech Global, who is working on our system integration and thus building all of these systems that allow the screen to mount onto the car, has worked in the past with the screens that you see on the sides of buses and the screens that you see on the sides of bus stops and mailboxes and things of that sort. And so they're really confident in the system that they've built. It has a small lock that doesn't allow for theft. They explain that if you don't know how to do it correctly and you don't have this small lock, that you would need a crowbar to get it off of the car. And so we feel confident, based on all of the testing that they've done and all of their market experience, that that won't be a high issue.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What about the power supply to run these monitors?
Yeah, they simply, we have a cord that runs through the door. It can be slammed on top of, and it plugs into the cigarette lighter.
And did you share what, I know you said like $2 million you're looking to raise. I don't know how much you've raised so far. You're saying the money you're looking to raise is for additional monitors. What do you pay the drivers, and how do you know that they're getting so many miles in for you, so they're not just sitting in the garage and trying to collect revenue from these opportunities?
Yeah, certainly. So right now we already have 25 screens that are purchased, and they're coming in January. And we're deploying those in New York City. And out of the 100 drivers that have signed up, because we have a finite amount of screens, we've had the ability to make more targeted decisions about where they're going. And so we know all of the drivers, we know their driving patterns and such. Similarly, our software knows activity because we track the locations to be able to understand impression data and how to target these advertisements. We know if they aren't driving. And in their terms and conditions, they are signing on and saying that if they aren't driving for a certain portion of time, we are certainly allowed to ask for it back. and we sustain ownership throughout the entire time. A driver doesn't pay for the screen, we give it to them. And so really our software is able to flag all of those things and let us know if it's not producing revenue.
Excellent. Do we have another question? Josh, did you have a question for Jonah?
Yeah, curious about the number of potential advertisers you have and any potential issues from particular states or locations that won't allow for, that type of mobile advertising.
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. In terms of the potential advertisers who have signed up, we have our sales team that is speaking to a large variety of them, and really they just want to know that the system's available. And so through all of the conversations, there are a handful of them who have said, just contact us when it's ready and we'd love to. And so the system is up, but the screens aren't on the road and they don't want to run a campaign a month in the future. And so there are certainly a grouping who are ready. But the nice thing about what programmatic advertising does is they sell everything that's unsold. And so when we go to market, we expect somewhere from the range of 90 to 100% of the screen unsold to advertisers. And ViStar will come in and fill every ad slot that is existent. The thing about that is that we pay a bit higher of a commission rate to them than we would if we sell it in-house, of course. And so we look to branch off of that as we continue through sales and marketing. And we think that we're going to be successful in that front. But the nice thing is that ViStar only sells what is unsold. So if we go off and sell 40% of our system, they sell the other 60%. So we're never wasting space on the screens. And then to the question about locations, again, with our software, we've come across a few of those issues with our legal team. And simply enough, it's a simple software solution where, for example, something we came across was not being able to advertise in certain locations, not in New York, but in terms of our thoughts towards expansion that are surrounding schools or that are surrounding freeways, etc. And we can put all of that into our code that just allows it to turn off when it's in that location. And so it spends a minute not running ads and then it turns right back on after.
Excellent. Thank you, Jonah. Do we have other questions from our investor judges? We do have some questions from the audience. It's like we're good there. First question from the audience is, have these, right now, obviously there's a winter storm that came through the northeast there. And so talking about winter conditions, have these been tested in winter conditions?
Yeah, absolutely. Our engineers have done a lot of testing. I've seen videos of them spraying it with hoses, jumping up and down on top of them. They're very well tested.
Excellent. And can you talk about, a little more in depth about the hardware or technical challenges that you've had and how you've overcome them, or how you intend to overcome some of the challenges that you may face with the hardware or technical challenges?
Yeah, no, absolutely. A pretty interesting issue that we actually solved at the beginning of this month was that there's a substantial amount of data that's exchanged between our server and the screen. And in our original designs, we had that going through a mobile app where a user goes on, downloads a mobile app, connects it to the screen, and then that acts as our transfer of information. But what we found is that it can then be rather slow and also put a burden of data transferring onto the user. And so what we did is, alongside our work with Tech Global, we actually embedded every piece of hardware with a cellular receptor so that now our screens are engaging with the system one-to-one without any intermediary between the two, which then allows us to exchange much more data at a faster pace and a lower cost. And similarly, it allows us to take much of the grunt off of the user. So for a driver, it's great to have them using it, but for John's Hot Dogs, for example, he doesn't need to. And so we can actually cut out the intermediary in terms of a lot of the data side of everything.
Thank you, Jonah. And the next question here from Mohammed sounds like, would you like to discuss another opportunity in Saudi Arabia as well for international expansion?
Yeah, we'd certainly think about that. The way that our international expansion is set up at the moment, as we have identified a few different areas that we're interested in, and begun the conversations in a handful of them. Something that we do is we have our eBumps International company, which we are raising for right now, which we then set up into joint ventures in different locations. And so when an investor is buying into the joint venture, it is with the domestic focus of whatever the location is. For example, it doesn't have to just be one country, but it can be a grouping or an area. And so, yeah, we've had this conversation with a handful of different investors in different locations. And so, yeah, we'd love to have that conversation.
So, Jonah, can you clarify that? So, an investor that's investing in your offering today, they're getting all of eBumps with an investment in your ask today.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then when we open up these joint ventures internationally, the parent company eBumps that we're raising for right now will have a holding in those firms.
Okay, so if you clarify that, then and a joint venture, if you were to open up into another international market, you prefer to do that as a joint venture for that market alone, but they could have the option to be in the main overall global entity. Is that, did I get that right?
Yeah, you did.
Okay. Jonah, we have another question from Meng Tan. You mentioned that the raise is $2 million. So how much has been raised and committed so far?
Yeah, we have a handful of investors who are committed right now who are varying on their specific amounts. The minimum amount is 50,000, and so they are just wavering on exactly what the amount that they're investing will be. And similarly, we have a handful of interested investors who are ready to invest in either January or once they can see a revenue stream, depending on what their in, interest is. And for them, we'll be seeing a revenue stream in early January, and there's a lot of interest on that front. And so we feel really confident about the raise that we have right now. And as I mentioned earlier, we hope this to be the last based on the revenue stream that we hope to see with 500 screens.
Excellent. Thank you, Jonah. We have about one more minute. If you have a question for eBumps, again, remind you that the company's presenting here today. We do have a networking event following this webinar. It'll be a separate meeting, and you can ask more questions and meet directly with the presenters here today, including our investor judges. And contact information is also available on the Linked Ventures website, linkedventures.net, and check that website frequently for the most recent updates. And you can also check for contact information on the companies that presented here. The videos and presentations will be available sometime next week as well. I did take the rest of the minute, so sorry we won't be able to get to all the questions. I think if there's additional questions, Jonah, if you will just answer those questions or type those questions in, but I think we did get to most every question. So our final presentation here today. Thank you, Jonah Tuckman, CEO of eBumps.